Kingdom Hearts is a franchise that is near and dear to my heart, some very fun childhood and teenage memories, and I've been meaning to cover it for a while, but I've gotten distracted by some other series and franchises that I've covered, but hey, now's the time, let's get into it. Hola, my name is X, and in this video, I'm going to give you the top 5 things that you need to know, more so from a fashion, aesthetics, and character design perspective as it relates to Kingdom Hearts. And then I'm going to get into some of the more main immediate protagonists of the game with a little bit of a style overview for each, along with some of their evolution and various forms that they take on through the different installments of the game. But before we do, I did want to highlight a channel called Empowered Muse, who within the past month has done a couple of fashion evolution videos on Sora and Riku. And I highlight that just because they went into some very specific details as it relates to the various clothing items and design elements, really more so from like a fashion / character design perspective. And I might kind of have a little bit of overlap, but I'm going to try to expand on that and be a bit more additive. But anyway, let's get into those top 5 things that you need to know about Kingdom Hearts as it relates to this conversation. I was 12 years old when Kingdom Hearts came out, and it was truly a revolutionary crossover phenomenon where Disney meets Final Fantasy. Just seeing those two universes collide was unlike anything. Like there's no experiencing that all over again. And just having that kind of grittier, cool, edgy JRPG, Final Fantasy specific aesthetic, blending with the more kind of whimsical, charming, fun, classic style of Disney definitely produced an innovative aesthetic and fashion design that kind of brought the two together and just gave us something new. And who can we thank for that? Tetsuya Nomura with his incredibly iconic character designs. We've seen the amazing work that he's done across the various Final Fantasy games and franchise as a whole. And a lot similar to a lot of the favorite elements that I think a lot of us have with regard to anime specific kind of outfits and fashion design. He definitely lent belts, zippers, exaggerated footwear, and multi-layered dimensional ensembles to the characters within this universe. So not only equipping some classic Disney characters with some fresh, cool, swaggy designs, but also just giving these newly introduced characters completely distinctive designs of their own, really helping them stand out and impress upon our memories and our hearts for decades to come. Speaking of hearts, we know that there are various themes that are core and central to the Kingdom Hearts franchise, story, world. And that definitely comes through and is well illustrated within the various character outfits and design elements of the clothing that the characters wear. Things like plaid to convey the conflict between light and darkness, or different trinkets to let us know that there's a special relationship between characters, or just to really signify something specific to their identity, or obviously various different symbols and icons as it relates to the nature of one's heart and how that's kind of going through a struggle or what's impacting and influencing it through the different installments of the game. Bright colors for youth, dark colors for maturity, and something a little bit more sinister and villainous. Various different elements that come together to really underscore and pay off these core, central, and key themes key to the Kingdom Hearts franchise. And along with that comes a strong reflection of growth and evolution through the various outfits that the characters have, and a good suite of different outfit changes, which I love a kind of change and range in a character's style. Very good depiction of personal style, but again, with different layers being added on or being taken off, different color palettes changes, and just different specific motifs sprinkled within these outfits as these characters grow and change, really highlights and conveys and exhibits to us the journey that they're going through internally and externally, because it's a multi-dimensional experience. And I feel like that is a very great thing to see, especially as it relates to identity and maturity amongst the most immediate main characters like Sora, Riku, and Kairi. And even though I don't talk about weapons too extensively within these videos, the Keyblade is a hard one to ignore. It's genuinely an iconic accessory when you really start getting into it. Not only does it serve a strong story, plot line, purpose, obviously, but it also is a great extension of the various characters and their identities, as well as a strong representation of the different Disney universes and worlds that they explore through the different installments of the franchise in the series. Like, I just love the different creative elements that are put into the little trinket keychains that hang from them, as well as just the overall forms that they take. It's just so much great attention to detail, interesting and unique and varied kind of battle and combat implications, helping them serve as an overall incredible fashion statement. All right, now that we've covered some basis and background there, let's go ahead and start moving into looking at these specific characters and their incredibly stylish designs within these games. Starting with Sora and just looking at his evolution arc in general, a few notes there. First of all, his name means sky. So I feel like that speaks to a lot of possibilities, a lot of potential. There is like a little bit of a hooded element, or just overall just more rounded elements to his style beyond some of the other characters that are a bit more mature than him, which I feel like speaks to some of that youthfulness, some of that innocence and purity of heart, even if he does go through a little bit of a darker evolution and kind of path as he's navigating all these different challenges. And then red seems to be his core color. In some forms that takes on more of like a fighter orientation and is really more of like a fighter archetype across gaming in general. And so I feel like that speaks to his passion, his like burning heart to do what's right and be an advocate for others in many different ways. And we see that early on in his most child form. And I'm going to echo a little bit of what the creator said in their video that I highlighted at the start, where there is no black. So it's just really pure innocence, really pure freshness. But red seems to be the most dominant color even at that age. And overall his style is so much more easier breezier than Riku. So I feel like that speaks to a little bit more of that consistent casual style that he carries through on his evolution. But he does get a touch more bite with his most kind of premier and primary design, where red is overwhelmingly dominant, just with the whole encompassing bodysuit as well. But sprinkles of blue and yellow just to show a little bit of that flex and potential and kind of different paths that he can take and different forms, but also largely reflective of Mickey Mouse. Even Tetsuya said that himself. With the jacket more so coming from the outside, just being more outerwear, foreshadowing some of that kind of conflict between light and darkness that he'll encounter externally and internally on his journey to come. And I think that the belt and chain elements are just enough style-wise to make the outfit not so super kiddish and a little bit more interesting. I'm gonna jump to the dream drop style because it feels like that's maybe not the most linear, but I'd say the best next evolution step, with, again, red really being the dominant force here, and it consistently will be and is. And I feel like it's a little bit more intermingled with some of the darker colors, showing that darkness is an evolving thing that he's encountering and experiencing. But overall, the style and composition of the outfit is largely the same. So, I mean, we know his personal style, it's going to have some rounded pant elements, but then Kingdom Hearts 2, so much more edge. We're definitely starting to get much more of that Final Fantasy JRPG treatment, where there's just much more belt and buckle detail. And it just feels like the zipper element is so much more pronounced, especially as it relates to the jacket, and obviously more black. But I still feel like to his core identity, he has those primary colors, showing that it's really the darkness coming in from the outside, trying to consume him and his overall path. But the primary colors are a bit more muted. So it just also isn't indicative of just more of that maturity and refinement, but the overall composition is still very consistent. Still feels a touch whimsical and a touch Disney as well. But I'd say Kingdom Hearts 3 was really where I was like, I'm so digging the style journey that they're taking him on, because it's increasingly feeling much more modern and practical and wearable, because some of that stuff definitely felt much more like fantasy-esque. This is where we're getting much more tangible style and fashion from him, even if it does follow the same composition and framework that he's had consistently up until this point. But like I was saying, red is his color. Even if he might be consumed and confronted with much more darkness, as we see with the black coming in, we still just see that red is outlining who he is. It outlines his identity. He has that passion, he has that vigor, and he has that fight to continue to push through and overcome. I absolutely love his Kingdom Hearts 4 outfit. It is once again further simplified, and it definitely leans much more along the lines of modern Final Fantasy. Think like even Final Fantasy 15-esque, like some of the guys. it just feels so much more wearable and so much more even further matured and less rounded. The pants don't feel as rounded, and it feels like it's just heading into a different direction, like he's almost experiencing a little bit of a metamorphosis, but red is still very central to his style. And I'm going to echo what the creator said before as well, where white is starting to make a resurgence, just showing that maybe that is a little bit of the rebirth that he is experiencing as a character. And I feel like he's definitely leading into becoming more of a genuine Final Fantasy design character overall, moving past the Disney, moving past the childlike whimsy and into something that's just more grown, like a grown young man. Now, getting into the various forms that Sora takes on throughout the game, starting with the dry forms from the first one, Valor form, like I was saying, like that just feels so native to who he is, most adjacent to his personal style and core identity. Sharper design elements and motifs and symbols within the look, and a dual keyblade situation, which I feel like in any sort of cutscenes in general, like he's fighting. He's not trying to cast spells and do too much of that. Like he's in the combat, like weapon to weapon. So I feel like this is a great reflection of his potential and who he really is. Then moving into the wisdom form, I don't even remember using this form too much when I played the game. It shows his potential. Again, sky's the limit as far as some different kind of things that he can take on in terms of his capabilities. And I like a little bit of that lighter blue kind of design towards the bottom of the pants, just to kind of show some mystical touch, but not the most, and it's like a single keyblade situation. So just like not the most, I'd say, adjacent to his overall style. The limit form, just a minor variation on his core aesthetic. And again, it just feels so much more red dominated, just with blue taking even more of like a passive approach, but the yellow becoming a little bit more prominent. And I mean, just more belts and buckles. So even for like the first premiere design where there wasn't too much of that in there, it just goes to show like evolving into something with a little bit more edge. But the master form is interesting, and even though I feel like red is closest to his kind of core role and purpose, the yellow as a dominant color does have a nice look. I feel like yellow was semi-secondary and like the second most prominent color throughout his designs to red, so definitely feels a little bit native. Also a dual keyblade situation, and really just highlights perhaps more intuition and just grounded capabilities, which we know that he evolves further into as he learns and grows and takes on additional abilities in general. So, but loved being able to tap into the final form. And I love how like the final most advanced forms are often in some sort of like glowy, luminescent white color, pure potential, pure raw palette, sky's the limit, with only just like black showing more of a complement than something like that's trying to come in and dominate the overall design. We obviously know that they're separate shadowy designs, and it's just more ethereal, floaty, divine. And so I think that was one of the coolest components. As far as Kingdom Hearts 3, I'm gonna more so touch on these main forms that give a little bit of a differentiated outfit. Like his second form just goes back to the Kingdom Hearts 2 design. So like there's really nothing too distinctive or unique there. But the Guardian form is yellow. So again, I feel like outside of being a focused fighter, he is also a guardian and a defender of different people and situations and what's right. And so I feel like that's an interesting aesthetic and look. And I feel like also ties to Riku, which we'll get there, but that's why I feel like that's not the most core to his identity, but a little bit more native. But I love how it takes on more of like the Herculean kind of depiction. The strike form, again, it just feels more like damage, fighter, really confrontational. Even if it's a bit more of a richer kind of maroon or burgundy color, it still is that red color scheme. And I feel like that's just more natural for him. Like when I look at it, I just feel like, oh, that's just him in an alternative outfit of what he typically would wear, just because of the red. And it just also just feels a little bit more tough and rugged with the overall darker muted color palette. And once again, the element form taking on blue, wisdom, magical, mage. So that's not entirely surprising there, but just feels like a different kind of extension than something like a core immediate alternative flex. But the Blitz form is interesting with the introduction of some green. I don't feel like we ever really got too much green in any sort of designs. And I actually love this look, and I feel like it's almost like a hint and a push towards how he starts to show up in the latter, and like in the most latter game, especially Kingdom Hearts 4. But I obviously love the ultimate form just because it feels like While it does seem largely like white, black, and gray, it does seem almost like it has a little bit of a slight holographic glittery touch to it, something a lot more mystical. Loving almost what feels like a zebra print in the pants. That's just very unique as far as his designs. It hasn't necessarily always had that kind of pronounced print like that. It feels very fashion, and really loving just the kind of play on sheen and color in this one, showing that he's like full spectrum. Then we have the light, dark, and double forms, and obviously very close reflection of one another, with the double literally just being those two forms combined. Cool contrast and duality, just bringing those two elements together. Not really bringing anything too new, but I mean, just the interesting prints on the pants are a different touch. Now, as far as the world changes, this is where it gets a little fun, and I'm only going to focus on the ones that feel a little bit more stylish, obviously. The Halloween town form is definitely amongst my favorites. It's overall rather simple, but it feels so sophisticated, like effortlessly chic to an extent, even though it's Halloween. Loving a little bit of like the stocking detail here instead of just like nothing, like just skin. The shoes feel just more sleek and almost more formal, and he just feels more buttoned up, even with like a little bit of it seems like texture with like the shoulders, what seems like a shawl. It just feels much more put together in a nice, simple, chic way. But I love his Christmas town look, and I love that it was still all black. I love how the hat just covers one eye just for a little bit of mystery. It's so fashion. Obviously, the fur texture is a nice touch, and it's a belted jacket. And I like how the crown details that are typically part of his signature necklace are just more buttons in this case, just because his neck is more covered. Simple flex in the overall design to make it just seem so much more fashion, but appropriately differentiated. I really just love the Tron or Space Paranoids look, obviously because of all the luminescent details. Like, it just feels so much more gamer, feels so transformed, even though once again, it's a very similar framework with some, what almost feels like laser tag oriented kind of like armor pad or like padded elements sprinkled across his design. The helmet is really cool, but still allows his like spiky hair to peek through just to kind of stay signature to his silhouette and his overall kind of like unique character design. Love the toy box design. Like, it doesn't feel as typically rounded, which I feel like that is a nice refreshing break from his overall silhouette and style. But I love the creative use of these blocks to still kind of keep his core elements in place. It just feels so much more close to how he kind of shows up in Kingdom Hearts 4, to be honest, in a good way. So I really love that they were able to kind of capture something a little different, close enough to what his core outfit is, but still kind of almost emerging within its own right. And then his Caribbean or like pirate outfit, even though we've seen this kind of like framework before, it's nothing like too groundbreaking, but for a character like him, where we're so much more used to something a little more, again, whimsical, fun, and youthful, this still kind of captures that with some of those rounded elements like in the pants and the boots. But it just is overall grittier, darker, more raw, which I feel like lends very well to his ongoing maturity and refinement, but just gives him a new aesthetic. Love a flex in style. And then quickly looking at the illustration made by Tetsuya for the Super Groupies collaboration, I feel like this definitely captures Sora's personal style as we know it through his emotional, I would say maybe even slightly emo-esque kind of journey that he's been on. Just the overall all black ensemble, a bit baggier in nature, which I feel like kind of captures some of that kind of rounded, bunchier style that he has. I'm surprised there's maybe not a little bit more of like a shorter, slightly cropped jacket, but it still feels fitting. And I feel like the white sneakers are an interesting touch just to break him out of all that darkness and just give him something not only obviously more practical from a shoe standpoint, but just something a little bit softer. Now, looking at Riku's style kind of arc or evolution in general, 3 main points. His name means land. So that to me just indicates something that's a lot more established or rooted in something and grounded already, like right off of the bat, which we can kind of see in his initial childhood design, even though it's also kind of casual, a little bit sporty. In complement to Sora's, it just feels much more structured and put together. Like, he already has a sense of his style early on, and it only evolves from there. And his color is yellow, which we saw from Sora's forms is like guardian oriented or mastery oriented, which I feel like aligns with Riku's potential and maybe some of the capabilities he had early on. Like, he was the benchmark that Sora was trying to kind of keep up with and compete with. And then moving into his Kingdom Hearts 1 look, I mean, again, we're still just really dealing with that yellow. Interesting that blue kind of comes through a little bit more, but I feel like that's more from like a practical, like they're constantly like on a beach in the water, the yellow and the black is still core to his style. And overall, it just feels much more tight, toned, like fit and cool. So he just is much more calm, cool, confident, collected, which is probably why he was just targeted early on from like a darkness perspective anyway, just because he already had some innate grounded potential existing within him. But much more early on compared to Sora, as we see with regard to Dream Drop, is his style immediately pivots to something so much more practical and everyday, something that we could see ourselves wearing, but really even something that feels much more Final Fantasy-esque. I feel like he is much more on a genuine Final Fantasy character track than a majority of like his most immediate like character counterparts, or really characters in general, with just like jeans, like their jeans and sneakers. Like, that's such a different kind of outfit composition already from what Sora has going on. And that top just feels so much more like sporty designer. So like he's already on that designer track. But especially in Kingdom Hearts 2, like he looks like he's Final Fantasy. Like, he looks like he's almost like an external Final Fantasy character coming in as like a cameo or an appearance. And again, just like with that white and yellow more so interplay, that's more so coming from the outside. It might show that, like, in contrast or inverse to Sora, he might have had an internal darkness kind of struggle, especially just with the corruption early on. But there's surrounding forces that are bringing him like light at the end of the tunnel to really help him step into really the more grounded true potential and true role and purpose that he will serve within the rest of like the series or storyline or the world. So practical, so diesel chic, like it just feels so effortlessly cool guy. And then when we get to the Kingdom Hearts 3 look, like the yellow is gone and it's almost feels like it's replaced by the checkered designs. It feels like that kind of occupies more of the space. It feels like he's graduated from whatever sort of like guardian potential that he had and a little bit of that like childhood whimsy, and he's fully moved into something that's Final Fantasy. Like, he is officially a rooted, grounded Final Fantasy character. I'm just with the haircut and everything else, like even just the layered ensemble, it just feels like he's in a whole new franchise, in a whole new dimension and realm. I'm just really curious to see how he continues to show up in the games, just because I feel like he's grown. He's a grown young man. His dark form is interesting. I don't feel like it's truly like necessarily reflective of any sort of core personal style of his own. Like, he's corrupted by Ansem, so like it's completely another force coming in to influence his aesthetic. But I mean, he already has like a prototype as a character to embody some of that cool, edgier aesthetic and visual anyway. And then his grid version look is interesting. Like, it's cool. It follows the same framework of what his core style is, but just like in the Tron world. And then looking at his Super Groupies collaboration illustration, like even though it's also a very dark aesthetic, it just is more masculine, chic, sophisticated dark. Like, we do get a little bit of what seems like a hoodie element, but it has like a leather, like biker jacket style, which we know we've seen across many franchises. That is the cool guy jacket. His boots are just so much more fashion and designer, and the bag that he has is only complementing and really bringing that full circle. So I really love seeing them depicted this way, because it really just highlights a little bit more of like the theme and the archetype in which they occupy from like a personal style perspective. Now, looking at Kairi's style or evolution arc, a few notes on her. Her name means sea. So when I think of like sea, water, fluid, ever kind of dynamic, moving body, kind of going with the different circumstances, but also a bit of a life source. So I feel like she represents the lifestyle, the slice of life, how things could be if like this crazy world that these characters were thrusted into wasn't happening, or like if they didn't have all these challenges. She's about the most regular character and the most passive out of the main three. So I definitely feel like that captures her. A softer overall color palette consistently, even though her style can kind of flex a little bit into some of that edge and that darkness that surrounds them and it influences them overall. Like as we see as a young kid, similar to Sora, just like bright, fresh, white, crisp, innocence, pure of heart. But then in her main, like premiere iconic appearance and as a teenager, I definitely feel like she almost leans a little effortlessly cool girl. Just with the crop, the sleevelessness, it's contextually appropriate for like, again, their island kind of vibe. And also just like with her water shoes, but it just feels definitely more stylish. With enough little black just to add some attitude, but not necessarily like this weird, crazy dark edge that she might be experiencing. Then when we get into Kingdom Hearts 2, again, I feel like she represents something that's just so much more practical, slice of life, day to day, because she has like what looks like a school uniform, which is like obviously really cute. And then she has like a regular, just like going about the town kind of outfit, which I feel like is something that a girl could easily wear without it feeling like too Kingdom Hearts universe costume-ish, depending on how it's depicted. With just, again, enough little touches of black just to give her a little edge. Like she's not super completely soft. She's seen some things and been exposed to some stuff, but I do love by Kingdom Hearts 3 how her style has evolved into a little bit more of that kind of RPG fantasy. I feel like she is wearing something that's a little bit more gear oriented. It almost feels like her and Riku kind of switched places. Like, I feel like that just goes to show their level of progression. It feels like she's evolved into an outfit that is a little bit more indicative of maybe what Sora and Riku wore early on, because she's now going through a little bit of her kind of abilities and discovering her Keyblade potential. And I feel like that's showing up in a little bit more of a fantastical outfit with some very interesting pleated skirt, contrast, and asymmetry on either side. But what I love about her super groupie illustration is that we knew that she had this like certain chic potential. Like just based on a couple of her early outfits, we saw that she could be very day-to-day, very practical, but just with a little bit more edge. She feels a little punky, especially here with just like the tall laced boots, but it's just that long coat that just gives her just so much more class and sophistication. Even though she's softer, there's just like this cool, mysterious edge, and mysterious like the sea. So I feel like there's just so much ever-flowing potential with her. Now I'm going to quickly pivot over and talk about the Disney character, just because it's a little fun and they're just as important too. Really more so looking at their style evolution, because there's not as much like, there's a little bit of character arc, but like really more so interested in their aesthetics. Especially looking at Donald's classic design, we see that he also occupies a royal magician role, and I feel like that's very fitting for him, just with like the natural blue color palette anyway, but then also just being someone who is just a little bit more kind of like talkative, a little bit more kind of like high energy and spirit. And so this look feels definitely like Final Fantasy-esque within like the royal magician look, but I love how they adapted it for the adventure style, just with something that feels not necessarily like super practical, because I mean he's like a duck, but like the hat is just a little softer and it feels like it'd be a strong statement item in anybody's outfit. And I feel like just his like tunic or his top is a good balance between how it kind of showed up originally with a little bit more of like those decorative kind of classic Renaissance elements that we see in like the royal magician style. So it just feels like a nice evolved modern look for him. But I love the toy box one once again. Like I think the toy box looks good, and even the Caribbean pirate one's pretty decent, but like I'm not like over the moon with it. And then with Goofy, I feel like it does make some sense that they made him more of like a knight oriented character. I feel like even though he's a little bit, it's an interesting juxtaposition between someone who's a little bit kind of like sillier and doofy with something that's a little bit more serious and defensive. And I feel like they built upon his framework. He already had a great outfit framework, fortunately, for like a general humanoid character. And so obviously just really leaning into that from like a medieval Renaissance standpoint with like the knight, but I feel like they adapted his adventure outfit very nicely. Gave him just the perfect zipper, belt, and buckle details to really align with like the overall Final Fantasy angle, but then just give his softer Disney design a little bit more of that modern edge, which is it was so cool to see, part of the magic and novelty of this whole franchise. And because of that, his world-changing forms just give a little bit more to work with. Like the Halloween Town one, even though it's like Frankenstein zombie-ish, like at least we're getting some sort of like outfit framework. Still kind of rugged and like neutral color palette, definitely works. And again, the toy box one, like they really just made these look so cool and like almost like urban streetwear-esque across the three characters. Like just really love the work that they did here, because some of the other ones just like are typical regular outfits, especially just given his regular typical kind of basic style, but it's that toy box one that went so hard. And then with Mickey, they definitely gave him the Sora style treatment. I feel like really just to highlight the parallel alignment and kind of relationships they have with one another to an extent, and really signifying Sora as like the main character, the guy of the Kingdom Hearts franchise. And obviously we see with some of the more core outfits, he's just really in those primary colors, similar to what Sora has, similar outfit framework, exaggerated shoes, rounded elements with a little touch of black and some white just to show that contrast, that duality, and a little bit of that edge. Belt and buckle details on him look so cool, just makes him feel so much more trendy and urban and modern and not too classic. But I really love to see him in these like all black ensembles. I mean, he is the cool guy, he is the man of the Disney universe. So just seeing him in something, especially like the Kingdom Hearts 3 outfit, it's just so refreshing, so contemporary, even with like those checkered elements, what looks like more of like a leather jacket. Like he is full style. And that's my take on the more kind of primary main characters of the Kingdom Hearts franchise. For like a part one of a potential Kingdom Hearts series, there's obviously room to explore more of the other protagonists as well as the antagonists. But let me know what you think. What are some of your favorite styles and forms that the characters took on? But until the next video, I'll talk to you later.